Video games are such an interesting art form, don't you think? Like, when things go well and you play a game that's truly extraordinary and at the top of its genre, it can be truly a life-changing experience that will stick with you for the rest of time. But when things go wrong and it's such an awful experience, that also sticks with you. But most interestingly of all, in my opinion, is when something is so awful, so vividly a bad product, that it's incredible someone thought it was okay to be released, but at the same time so entertaining that you can't help but just be enthralled in some way. Resident Evil 3 was released on April 3rd, 2020. Following the knockout success of RE2's remake, it only seemed natural that Capcom's next Resident Evil game was in prime position for a remake, and it was exciting. Resident Evil 2 did such an incredible job with Mr. X that a modern day Nemesis was all but guaranteed to be the coolest thing ever. And, well, they really screwed the pooch on this one. No fancy words to cover it this time. Resident Evil 3 is a bad product. Huh? What's that asterisk for? Resident Evil 3 Remake is a bad product. Oh, come on! Whatever, I'm sure that it isn't anything important. Let's just see what the game has to offer and get right into it today, shall we? The game starts, and we see this really interesting live-action footage of an Umbrella advertisement, as well as the construction of the bioorganic weapon that this entry is known for. Nemesis. Who, by the way, is getting his own section of the video, so if it seems like I'm glossing over him in this section here, don't worry. I'll get back around to it. We really start the game in this apartment in first person, where we get to see the face of residential badass, Jennifer Lawrence. Oh. Hold on. Hello? Huh? What's that? What do you mean that's Jill Valentine? I grew up watching the Hunger Games. No, I know what Jennifer Lawrence looks. So Katniss Everdeen takes a look in the mirror and notices something odd. Blood drips from her nose and her veins seem to be pumping something corruptive, slowly turning her into an infected. And right as she pulls the trigger on herself, she wakes up. It was all just a dream. We look in the mirror again, this time for real, and we can finally begin properly playing. Or at least that's what I would say, if not just a moment later, another cutscene plays! Okay, this is the perfect time to bring this up, but my god, does RE3R have a major issue with cutscenes and QTEs. This is the beginning of the game, the perfect time to represent what a game is going to be like. You know what? Let's bring up the previous two games as an example. Resident Evil's introduction is absolutely perfect for what the game wants to do. You get some cutscenes at the beginning, sure, but they serve a purpose. The reason Jill has 4 cutscenes in close proximity to each other is to set up a rapport with Barry, a character that you will see frequently throughout Jill's story, and right after that split up, you get the feeling of isolation, something that I feel wouldn't be as effective if Barry left you at the same time Wesker did. It really adds to the isolation knowing that even though you have a friend and colleague in Spencer Mansion, you can never know where he is to rely on him. This sets up the atmosphere of the game perfectly. Resident Evil 2's introduction is arguably even better than the first's. Not only does the game set up the atmosphere perfectly in the gas station, but just like RE1, it gives you the taste of actual gameplay that you'll be experiencing for most of the game. Now, let's see what the first section of Resident Evil 3 does, shall we? Instead of getting to see proper gameplay, we are introduced to multiple instances of running away cut short by bombastic cutscenes. And even when you escape and get our first weapon, the game puts the first zombie of the game not in front of you, but behind you. I truly think this needs to be reiterated because I haven't seen anybody talk about this. The game's very first obstacle when you get access to the game's main mechanic of fighting zombies is placed out of the way. Hell, the whole first section you don't even need to fight at all. The closest section you need to fight is right here when the zombies block the elevator, but even if you take a hit, it isn't really going to matter. The game has such a big issue with making important things feel like absolutely nothing. Like, during that last paragraph, I didn't even mention that Brad Vickers, the helicopter pilot and STARS member who you meet after escaping the Nemesis for the first time, dies. This was an important person to Jill and he gets fridged before the prologue is even over. And unlike how in the original where he met his demise at the hands of the Nemesis, For some reason, they decided in this remake that being bitten by a regular-ass zombie was more worthwhile instead. It's such an incredibly mind-boggling decision, but somehow not the worst one they make in this game. We'll get to that later. But at the very least, we now escape the Nemesis thanks to the single best character in this game, Carlos Oliveira. This man can do no wrong.
Hey! Fuckface! Hey, easy, lady. I got you.
Who are you? What are you doing?
Name's Carlos, and I'm saving you. Come on, let's get you someplace safe.
But now we can finally get into the game proper. It took 2 whole ass pages of this script. We're tasked with bringing the train systems online, but first we have to get to a power station and restore energy, so we head topside to do what Jill Valentine does best. Oh, and by the way, you'll be seeing footage of me with an infinite ammo handgun and these attack coins. These are items that you can buy in the shop of the game after earning enough points through challenges. They make the game more fun to experience on repeated playthroughs, but trust me, it isn't really affecting the difficulty of the game that much on normal mode. Turning an already easy game even easier doesn't really matter to me, at least. This just makes it more fun to go through this video. So, we visit the train station to pick up a hose since the alleyway to the power station is, well, on fire, and we get introduced to the totally not main human villain of this game, Nikolai Zinoviev.
You're UBCS?
Yeah, careful, careful. Come on, don't look at me like that, alright? I'm not an infected.
let's take care
No, wait, please!
What the fuck?
He was infected.
He might have been infected.
Oh, stars, this soft. No wonder so many of you dead.
And what are you, UBCS? Killing your own people?
He would have turned. There's your sense of self-preservation. Go back to the subway station. We don't need a bleeding heart like you getting in the way.
And as if this asshole wasn't bad enough, we're now stuck dealing with the absolute worst part of the game, the power station, aka the writer's barely disguised fetish. We need to turn on 4 different breakers before being able to leave and turn on the station entirely. All the while, you need to take out these bugs, which are apparently called drain damos. They aren't really hard to deal with, a couple of shots and they go down. But god damn it if it isn't uncomfortable as hell when they grab you. I'm just saying. They put a little too much effort into this animation, but whatever. We hit the switches, get out of there, and burn down the nest. But like a bad rash, who else but Nemesis shows up again like the Kool-Aid Man to take us down. Unfortunately for him, this is a New Game Plus run and I can fight back. But you don't really get anything for doing so, so you just run away back to the train station and get the trains running again. After we get the trains running again, we get introduced to a new type of zombie, the Nemesis Alpha. These lovely creatures aren't hard to kill or anything, you just gotta make sure to damage the host before attacking the parasite itself. But they can be pretty dangerous and attack from a long distance though, so watch yourself. But after making our way back to the subway, it's time for our first encounter with the Nemesis. Nope! We stun him, go through 2 rooms, then don't have to deal with him for a whole other section. We are nearly a quarter of the way through the game and we haven't had a single proper interaction with the Nemesis. Whatever, this next section adds literally nothing to the story, so while we traverse the sewers, I want to talk about something in this game that's actually good for a change. The gameplay. While the game's story is leaving much to be desired, the proper moment-to-moment gameplay is absolutely worthwhile. Jill isn't as stiff as she was back in Spencer Mansion, and her incredible badassery shows. The crisp visuals of a critical hit feel nice, and Jill has this dodge mechanic that, if timed right, lets her roll right through an enemy attack and slow down time, bullet time style, for a counterattack. The gunplay and movement feels so nice that it really sucks that it keeps getting interrupted by these cutscenes and these portions where you just need to run away. But after making our way through the sewers and dealing with some hunter gammas, who, by the way, are weak to fire because of character flaws, God, I love jokes like this, we come out the other side where Nemesis meets us with a flamethrower in hand, and after a little bit more pointless chasing, we finally get to fight our first boss of the run, the Nemesis.
Surprise, motherfucker!
Now, again, I'm using New Game Plus items here, so it makes it look even easier, but it really isn't too difficult to deal with him regardless. If you're good at rationing ammo with utilities, which you should be considering we've gone through 2 whole games by now where we needed to do rationing out of supplies, with proper use of grenade and launcher rounds, the Nemesis goes down without any sort of trouble at all. We make our way through the back alleys of Raccoon City, which, fun fact, is the same area we escape RPD from in RE2, and make our way back to Jill's designated area of Raccoon City. Wouldn't want the police officer visiting the police station. And as a side note, it's also here where we visit Kendo. You know, the guy from the last game that held Leon at gunpoint. Yeah, it's nice to see him again. One angry Nemesis chase scene later involving a rolling head, and we finally get onto the train so we can escape. Well, the game was fine. It only took about an hour to beat, which didn't really... Wait. What's going on?
What was that? How is this fucker not dead yet?
No, they're gone. Yeah, he's sweat.
Much to the surprise of absolutely nobody, Nemesis survives, kills everybody on the train, and Nikolai leaves us and the other guy, Mikhail, to die. But we don't have time to worry about that because the screen fades to black and we get to explore RPD with the 2 unironically best characters in this game. Carlos, who we get to play, and Tyrell, another member of the UBCS. And honestly, the most real character I think I've ever seen in a Resident Evil game. The RPD in this game is the exact same as it is in RE2, even down to the locker combinations. It's honestly pretty neat and feels like a nod to the people who did play RE2's remake. Unfortunately, this is kind of a pointless section of the game story-wise. The reason Tyrell and Carlos are here is to recover an Umbrella scientist named Bard. Nathaniel Bard. Unfortunately, he's not here anymore, and we just get a call with him telling us that he's at the hospital, meaning that this entire RPD escapade, or how cool it was nothing but a waste of time. But now that we're back in Jill's shoes, we get to go through another section of the game. Or at least we would if this game had any sort of quality whatsoever. Instead, we walk through a sewer system for like 5 minutes max before being thrown into another boss fight with the second boss of this game, the Nemesis. Again, but this time he's a dog. Now, this boss is oddly even easier than the first fight, and it's all because this game just gives you the answer to it a room earlier. See, you get these mine rounds for the grenade launcher that you're supposed to shoot at the walls whenever Nemesis runs around on them, but you can really just pound them with these things. Hound, get it? Until you take them down. Hell, you don't even get any more mine rounds outside of this section of the game. It was literally an item developed for this singular boss fight and never again. And as if that wasn't bad enough, even after beating the Nemesis, he still gets the last laugh by infecting Jill with the T-virus through a barb that he apparently grew somehow. And instead of Jill having any sort of agency in her own rescue, she passes out for half a day so that Carlos can come and bring her to the hospital that he and Tyrell were already heading to. This is Carlos's final section of the game, and unfortunately it doesn't last that long. You have to explore the hospital to find a tape with Bard's voice to be able to go inside his lab. And besides fighting the new beta hunters, there really isn't much interesting here. That is, of course, except for the very final part of this section. Carlos returns to Jill with a vaccine, and with Tyrell's support, things seem to be going well. That is, of course, until zombies show up to overturn the hospital. Tyrell begins to work on closing the shutters so that they can't come in, but it's up to Carlos to take care of the ones coming in. This is unironically my favorite part of this game. Getting to play as Carlos and blow my ammo on all the zombies and beta hunters. I'm just realizing there's a joke to be made about the name beta hunters, but I won't be making it. Just know that I could have. Getting to play as Carlos and blow my ammo on all the zombies and beta hunters is just so much fun. The gameplay of this game is just so good that whenever all the story, all the shit characters, we will get to it, I promise, and all the stupid cutscene bullshit is gone and out of the way, this game is, and I mean this in no sarcastic tone, one of the most fun Resident Evil games ever. I talked about it earlier and I'm going to talk about it again, but Resident Evil 3 Remake is such a fun game to play that it physically hurts me that this game feels like it's trying to stop you from playing it. It feels like this really wanted to be a movie because all the cutscenes are truly cinematic and wonderful, but in turn it feels very, look over here, isn't this fire effect so cool? Ooh, so quirky. That was stupid. But sadly, this is the only section of the game that's like this. And even worse, we don't get to play as Carlos anymore. Instead, we're stuck with Jill, easily one of the worst characters in this game, and you can quote me on that. Okay, that sounds unwarranted. Let me explain. I'll do anything other than talk about the story of this stupid game anymore. Jill Valentine is an incredibly popular character, and honestly, her other renditions is a character that I truly love, but her portrayal in this game just kind of feels... I don't know how to describe it other than stereotypically American. She curses a lot and acts like a dick, which I've mentioned in other videos that I'm not really a fan of characters acting like this. As I've grown older, characters who are cold or try to act cruel and uncaring or just downright evil appeal less to me. I just couldn't get invested into Jill here, but this hardly adds to how much I like Carlos, because he's the exact opposite. He really adds that cheesy Resident Evil charm that this game feels almost ashamed to admit any relation to. Well, I'm out of things to distract myself with, so let's just hit the Spark Notes version, shall we? Jill heads down to Umbrella's second nest facility to find Carlos before the US bombs Raccoon City to Kingdom Come. Tyrell dies of the Nemesis, despite Jill being right there for it to focus on. They synthesize an antivirus to the outbreak, get it stolen by Nikolai as he leaves us to fight the third boss in the game. The Nemesis, again. But this time as a dog. Again, this boss fight is really almost identical, except now some zombies spawn that you can honestly ignore, but hey, after beating it, you can walk 5 more steps and fight the final boss of the game. Yeah, it's Nemesis for the 4th time, but not as a dog this time. Instead, he's a big-ass blob. But, as it turns out, blobs are weak to arc lightning. So one easy boss fight later that I had to actively die for to make sure that I got enough footage for my next section where I talk about the Nemesis, we get to the final part of this game. Shooting Nikolai and leaving him for dead, as Jill and Carlos ride off into the sunrise on a helicopter. This game's story is so simple but so ass. But now that we're finally done talking about it, we can talk about an even bigger disappointment. Mr. Only Boss in the game himself, the Nemesis. Now, I want to preface this section by saying that, like the other 2 games we've covered so far, I've never played the original version. I will say that I have done my research and looked deep into the original games. The YouTuber Pastra made an incredible video talking about how RE3R completely goofs up its portrayal of the Nemesis, and I really recommend you check it out after watching this video. I'll link it in the description below, but speaking as someone who doesn't have any formal preconceived notion of what Nemesis is supposed to be in this game, beyond Marvel vs. Capcom 3, I can honestly say that he still sucks. But first, the positives. While the original Trenchcoat Nemesis looks super cool and menacing, I can't help but love Trashbag Nemesis here. In terms of design, I think the Nemesis is such a cool looking monster. Hell, even his dog form looks pretty cool, although nowhere near as cool as the regular form. I think his use of weapons are pretty cool and intimidating, and while the chase sections are kinda boring, I will say they are pretty neat in concept. Alright, that's all the positives. Now the negatives. Nemesis is too easy to deal with. Whether it's a boss fight or not, Nemesis is the biggest non-issue in this game. Hell, the alphas he creates are more dangerous to you than he is, and as for his boss fights, forget it. He's an absolute joke. There's honestly no better way of exemplifying this rather than just going through the encounters as they come, so let's get into it. The first Nemesis encounter comes here at the very beginning of the game, and it's more of a glorified cutscene than anything else that's only split by a very small modicum of gameplay. This encounter ends with this honestly really badass reveal of the Nemesis face, and Carlos' introduction that we talked about all the way back in the beginning of this video. The next time we encounter the Nemesis is after this kinky bug section where he pops up through the wall Kool-Aid Man style, and honestly, despite the fact that you see me fight him so much in this footage here, you can just as easily run away and dodge his attacks without much issue at all. After getting the train station back online, we get to see him actually turning a regular zombie into an alpha Nemesis, which while pretty cool, puts old Nemi here in perfect position to get stunned and naded, making this section of the encounter pretty much pointless. But, to be fair, not as pointless as the final section of this encounter, where all we need to do is stun him once, and then we can kick this grate in 3 times in a row without him so much as coming near Jill. After the sewer section, Nemesis shows his ineptitude by literally having Jill's head in his skull-crushing hand, but decides instead to just toss her and point his new toy menacingly at her. This encounter basically just involves us running up to the roof until we finally get to have that first boss fight with Nemesis, and the only boss fight I'd actually consider good in this game. Nemesis 1 is aggressive and has a variety of attacks that make this boss fun to encounter. For starters, his basic flamethrower attack forces you to stay at a good distance while also making your shots harder to hit because the flame can obscure your vision sometimes if it's pointed at just the right angle. He also has this flame rain attack that can limit an area of the arena for a while. But as I said before in the general recap section of this video, this fight is really easy if you've been good with managing your ammunition. The next Nemi chase comes not too long afterwards, except instead of a flamethrower, this time he's rocking, well, a rocket. A rocket launcher, that is.
I'm so bad at these jokes.
This is just another run straight ahead section, except at this part where you'll have to turn back to allow his rolling head to pass by, but then you can just go back to running. The next proper Nemesis encounter is that dogfight I mentioned during the general overview. And like I brought up there, just use these mind rounds that the game gives you to trivialize this entire fight. This is actually just pretty bad design, and it's honestly one of my least favorite things in this game. Tied with Jill Valentine herself and that creepy fetish bug place. Then, we don't have to deal with Nemesis for a whole chunk of the game. He then shows up for just a moment to kill Tyrell, and then doesn't show up again until after this whole section, where he shows up to do the second dogfight and the final blob fight. It's so awful that this is what Nemesis has been relegated to. Capcom really missed the mark with this game and its villain as a whole. This game has 4 proper boss fights, less than 4 hours worth of content for a first time player, and yet still asks you for $60 for this piece of garbage. And no, coming with a bundled side game for free doesn't excuse this pricing at all. Hell, I haven't even played Resistance and I have no desire to. So, yeah. I guess that's it. Thanks for watching. Huh? Why isn't the video over yet? That's all I gotta say. Resident Evil 3 Remake is a bad game that you shouldn't spend your money on. Oh god damn it, it's that stupid asterisk again. Fine, what do you want? A whole other section? Fine. So, there's no denying that nearly everything I've said about this game is a negative, as it should be. This game is overpriced, short, and has an incredibly unlikable main character. So why do I love this game so much? There's a video about Metal Gear Rising by a YouTuber I really love named Jacob Geller that has this one section where he talks about killer to filler ratio. This is basically about how much of a game's content versus its fluff is balanced out. He talks about how MGR is best played when your foot stays on the gas, never stopping your forward momentum and skipping cutscenes and codec calls. And I think the same principle applies to Resident Evil 3 Remake? Let me explain. If you skip every cutscene, this game becomes even shorter than it already is, sure, but that also means that you're left with only the best part of the game. The gameplay. The moments where this game stops trying to be all spectacle and just lets you dive through Raccoon City are exhilarating. This game begs to be speedran, and while the RE series is already pretty popular with speedrunners everywhere, RE4 being an especially entertaining game to watch and run itself, RE3R's short playtime and excellent gunplay really make this game feel like it was made for speed and replayability over being a conventionally good game. Now, I'm not saying that this game's flaws are forgiven. God no, this game is a travesty in slow motion, and other RE games have become speedrunning icons without sacrificing quality to the degree this game has. Just look at basically any other mainline game in the series, be it the remake or original. I liken Resident Evil 3 Remake to that of video game junk food. It's not good for you, but goddamn if a McDonald's burger doesn't just hit the spot sometimes. But with Raccoon City in ruins, it's high time we book it on over to Spain for our final game in this Resident Evil miniseries. We'll be covering Resident Evil 4 Remake, so I'll see you there. Catch you later.